Welcome back to the Muzzle Blast podcast. This week, we've got Mike Beliveau. He's a freelance writer and also the man behind the Duelist 1954 YouTube channel. We're talking with him about some of his personal history with muzzleloaders and firearms in general. And then he also shares some great stories about TV, movies, events that he's been to, his background. So if you're a fan of Duelist 1954 or his YouTube channel, we've got some neat stuff coming for you this week. If you haven't checked out his channels, we'll put links down in the show notes, and we'll be promoting Mike's work all through this month as we promote the episode. So be sure to follow the National Muzzleloading Rifle Association on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. See all Mike's work.
Well, hi, I'm Mike Beliveau, and I like to think of myself as a writer. So I think these days more people think of me as a video creator on YouTube, which is a little bit ironic. But I've been writing since the late 80s. And I started off with a couple of pieces of Muzzleloader. And from there, I wrote a piece for Gun World, which I sold, and I ended up writing for Gun World for almost 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Mostly about black powder, how-to stuff. That was kind of my niche then, building kits, making, bits of gear, that sort of thing. And a friend of mine in one of the gun companies, I think around, I'm going to say around 97, recommended that I send something into Guns of the Old West, which at the time was a fairly new magazine. I think it had been out for maybe 3 years. So I did. I wrote an article on cartridge conversions of cap and ball 6 guns and sent it in, and they liked it. And they started asking me to write more stuff. And as it turned out, when they were expanding, I was about the only person writing about black powder that wrote anything for the magazine. So they asked me if I'd write a black powder column and be the black powder field editor for the magazine. And I did. And I really enjoyed that. I did it for almost 20 years.
Wow, that's awesome.
And I wrote a lot of modern stuff then too. I wrote a lot of combat handguns stuff. I like all firearms.
Yeah.
I mean, but without a doubt, flintlock rifles are my favorite. But the opportunities for writing about those were few and far between, and still are.
Yeah.
So the cowboy gun craze was a good thing for me, and I enjoyed that. And I was a reloading editor for Combat Handguns magazine for a number of years, and started a YouTube channel, I guess about 8 or 9 years ago. And I to be honest with you, I really never thought I'd do that. A friend of mine worked on me for about 2 years saying, "Oh, you should start this YouTube channel." And I thought, well, I'm a writer. I'm not a video guy, and I'm a still photographer. In fact, I still prefer still photography. I really just enjoy that as an art form.
Yeah.
But yeah, he said, "Look, you've already got the guns. You're writing an article." He said, "So you pick up a video camera and shoot a fast video. Why not?" So eventually he wore me down, and I thought, well, why not? So I gave it a try, and surprisingly, it's been quite successful. I believe it's one of the biggest black powder channels on YouTube. We've got about 60,000 subscribers now.
Yeah, it certainly is. I'll admit that's what I know you from. I don't come from a generation that really reads a lot of magazines. So for me, your videos are what brought me to you.
Yeah, it's funny like that. I'll be honest with you. I still think of myself as a writer.
Yeah.
And I know you've seen some of my postings on Facebook and whatnot. I mean, I enjoy the act of writing, even something as simple as that. And I like to think about it. I like playing with the language, but I just find it almost ironic that after being a gun writer for probably 35 years now, what I am most famous for is for being a videographer. And it just strikes me as being a little bit funny and a little bit ironic. I'm very happy with it. I've really enjoyed doing the YouTube stuff. But
it's kind of interesting that you talk about writing for these magazines that a ton of people read, and like you say, what you're most known for is something that you started on your own.
But I joke about this all the time because I think it's just so indicative, and I guess it's a difference in the technology and a difference in the culture. But forever as a magazine writer, if I got 10 or 20 pieces of mail in a year, fan mail or questions or that sort of thing, that was a lot. I started doing this YouTube thing, and within months, I was getting 100 pieces of email a day. And that has just continued. I mean, I have so many people asking technical questions or whatever, sometimes in comments on YouTube, other times just, they get my email and they email me the questions, or because of Facebook. I'm only on Facebook because of YouTube.
Right.
And I never thought I would get on. I was kind of, I wouldn't say I'm a Luddite because I worked with computers all my life as part of my Navy career. In fact, I designed business computer systems, but
really,
I invented some of the computer systems that the Navy uses, like the business end of them, not the hardware end of them, but how they were going to do the things that they did.
Huh.
But I had a whole design shop that worked for me. When I retired, I worked for the Navy for 30 years.
Okay.
And I retired about 10 years ago, and then I was a military consultant. We like to call ourselves contractors for another 4 years, and I ran a pretty big shop of consultants for one of the consulting companies. I was the operations director for the Mid-Atlantic region for them, with commercial and government clients, but mostly military stuff was what I did. But on the side, I was always a writer, but I never really got into the social media stuff. But then I needed to because of the YouTube, and I ended up getting hooked on it, which is almost embarrassed to say that, but I do spend more time on Facebook than probably I ought to.
I think a lot of us do.
Because everybody tells me that nobody under 50 is on Facebook anymore. So, I guess maybe it's just part of my generation. I don't use Instagram or Snapchat or any of those things.
Yeah, I'm 26, and so a lot of people my age have shifted around, and a lot of my peers hang out on YouTube a lot, and Instagram are the big ones. And I think in the early years, Facebook was certainly, a much younger person place to hang out online, but they're seeing the demographics change quite a bit. To like you said, that the 50 and over is a large chunk of the user base now.
Yeah, it's all grandparents now on Facebook. It's I find all that to be kind of humorous, and I guess maybe I'm still lost in the past. I'm working with a company right now to design a website for me to give me a place to park things and work in progress and have a blog, that sort of thing. And one of my friends, who's a younger person, said, "Oh God, I don't even know anybody who looks at websites anymore. You should just set up an Instagram account and go from there." And I thought that's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Because I think what a lot of young people don't realize is that most of these social media things point to information that's on a web page.
Yeah.
So, so when you're reading a lot of these social media things that has a link in it or whatever, that's just taking you to a web page right there. You still need that backbone to host, the meatier stuff than what you're going to have in the social media chat. But anyway, we'll see how it goes. But yeah, the videos, that's become a pretty big part of my life. In fact, I'm editing 3 of them today.
That's right. You were just at the Lake Cumberland CLA show. Is that right?
Well, I wasn't at Lake Cumberland. I was at the Lewisburg show.
Oh, okay.
Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. It's a week before.
Okay.
And it's a really good show, and I've gone to it for probably the last 9 years. And I'm thinking pretty strongly about going to Lake Cumberland next year. I've never been there, but I'll have to do one or the other. You know, even though it's possible to do them both because they're on sequential weekends, I just don't like to be gone from home for that long.
Yeah, it's hard to be out on the road that long.
Yeah, I mean, I used to, for my Navy career, I used to travel a lot, probably 50% of the time. I was on the road, and I enjoy a little bit of traveling, but I also like to be home with Mary Pat and the dogs, and not just out on the road all the time. And a busy part of my year is coming up now for travel because it'll be all the spring events. I'll be at School of the Long Hunter in early April. I'll be at Fort Frederick Market Fair in later April, and then I'll be at the raid at Martin Station in early May.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's kind of come home, do the laundry, dry out the gear, load the truck again,
and go back out.
Yeah, but Lake Cumberland's on my list for next year. I haven't caught the CLA show in Lexington for 2 years. I'll probably go out there this fall too.
Yeah, that's a good show.
It is. I find if you catch, like around here, if you catch the Morgantown show, or I don't know if you've ever been to Dixon's.
I haven't. I'd really like to.
That is a real good show. It's real different, of course, because it's outside.
Mm-hmm.
I've been going to that one. Well, I think it's been running 35 years now. I was at the first one. I think I've missed 5 or 6 in the 35 years they've been doing it. And it really is a good show. But you see, I'll see the same people there that I'll see at Lewisburg and the Morgantown show. And if I go to CLA, I'll see about, say, half or 60% of the people that I see all the time. And then 40% of the people I'll see there are people that don't get out to the East Coast, you know? So almost all the guys from out here will go to the CLA show.
Mm-hmm.
The big makers, they're all CLA members. So, you know, guys like Tim Williams and Mitch Yates, the Emmigs, they'll all be out there.
Yeah.
But you know, then when I'm out there, I'll see folks like Frank House and you know, guys like that I just don't see coming out here.
Right.
So
where are you?
Nice.
Where are you located? What state?
I'm in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So South Central Pennsylvania.
You talked about your background in the Navy. Did your interest in firearms start in the Navy when you were in the military there, or was it something before?
No, my interest in firearms goes back to almost when I was a toddler.
Okay.
You know, when I was a kid, I was born in 1954. So when I was a kid in the 50s and the 60s, it was the great age of Westerns.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, every TV show, every movie, it seemed like was a Western. And I was hooked on them from the time I could start to walk. All my littlest baby pictures, all of my toys, I always wanted cap guns and stuff like that. And that interest just stuck with me all my life. I mean, it started when I was tiny, and it just never went away. I was always interested in guns and interested in history. That's kind of funny. I was, from watching all those Westerns, right? I was really interested in that.
Yeah.
And then when I was a really young kid, Fess Parker played Davy Crockett on the Walt Disney show.
Yeah.
And that just captivated me, the long rifles and the Indians and all that stuff. And about the same time, I remember I was out with my dad. We lived on a farm in northern Vermont, big dairy farm. And he was probably squirrel hunting or something. I used to tag along with him all the time. But, And I said, boy, it's too bad we didn't have any real Indians around here, like the Apaches or the Sioux. And he said, what are you talking about? He said, around here they used to have the Mohawks. He said, and believe me, if you had one of them on your back, you'd know about it. And that line just always stuck with me. And he took me down to Ticonderoga.
Okay, yeah.
Down at the southern end of Lake Champlain. We lived right on Lake Champlain. We were up at the northern end, lived right on the shore of it. So he took me down there, and well, I just kind of got hooked as a little kid on history. And it always stuck with me, So, and when Daniel Boone came on TV, oh gosh, yeah, I watched that all the time. All I wanted to do was get out there and shoot long rifles, and it was just crazy. In fact, when I got my first 22, my father bought me a semi-automatic 7-shot, detachable magazine, clip magazine, semi-automatic, and I was a little disappointed because I had been asking for a single-shot bolt action with a full Mannlicher stock on it, so I could pretend it was a flintlock rifle.
Right.
So that's crazy how I was, And I was probably about 12 when I read The Frontiersman by Alan W. Eckert.
Uh-huh.
And that just grabbed me. And I was, at the time, I was also reading Kenneth Roberts' stuff. He wrote about the 18th century in New England, French and Indian War and Revolutionary War. Some great books. And in fact, Arundel is probably his best book. I still read it every 3 or 4 years. Historical novel, just excellent. And I was just really getting hooked on that period. And living in New England, I was very interested in the French and Indian War and the Revolutionary War.
Right, because it happened there.
Yeah, right. A lot of stuff happened there. But Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett had a big impact on me. And it's I interview a lot of guys for Muzzleloader because I've written a number of artisan profiles for them over the years. So I'll interview guys. It's funny, but guys my age almost invariably mention, Daniel Boone or Davy Crockett as getting their interest going. And guys a little bit younger, it'll be Robert Redford and Jeremiah Johnson.
Yeah.
And then if you get guys a bit younger than that, it'll be Last of the Mohegans. Yep. And it seems like these movies or TV shows have a huge impact on the hobby. And I always say that, if things are declining, what we really need is a really good TV show or a really good movie. And that'll get things jazzed up again.
Yeah, I think a lot of times it's not the kind of thing that, leads to a huge renaissance, but it gets a new group of people interested because invariably it's going to connect with people that are into it. And, maybe not all of them, but some of them are going to hold on to that and then start getting into it and get interested.
Oh, yeah. When, it's funny in the 70s, I was doing a lot of competitive shooting with muzzleloaders. And almost everybody online had a Thompson Center Hawken, and they all wanted to be Jeremiah Johnson. It was just huge. It had a tremendous impact. It's kind of funny, really, because like I have recently watched some episodes of Daniel Boone because they're on things like MeTV.
Okay.
And they're awful. I mean, they're awful, and I look at them, I think, my God, how could I have watched that? It's absolutely terrible. I mean, they don't hold up at all. Yeah. Now, I will say Davy Crockett, which was done in the 50s, actually holds up better than the Daniel Boone TV show, which, like I say, that could be awful. And yet, when I was a kid, man, you couldn't have pulled me away from that TV set on Thursday night. Yeah. I mean, it was all I wanted to see, and it really, really had a big impact. I was always much more interested in the Eastern frontier. Definitely. I never got sucked into the Jeremiah Johnson stuff. In fact, I'll be honest with you, I didn't even think it was that great a movie. It was okay, but not that great a movie. The Mountain Men with Charlton Heston and Keith. That was his first name. Stuck. But Charlton Heston starred. I don't know if you ever saw The Mountain Men.
No, I'm going to have to add it to my list.
That is a much better movie of that period. It's a little bit humorous, but it's a straightforward adventure story and quite good. Brian Keith.
Okay.
Was the co-star in that. But no, that was excellent. Jeremiah Johnson, that was just okay. Not the greatest thing.
Well, maybe it's good that you don't travel too much out west then. Not like in Jeremiah Johnson.
Maybe. I mean, I would like to. It's not. A few years ago, I'm kind of semi-retired from writing now, so I'm doing a few things for Muzzleloader. I'm doing a few things for American Frontiersman. Just doing stuff to keep my hand in. I was the Black Powder field editor for Gun Digest, but that's over now. So yeah, I'm heading for 66, and I'm trying to kind of slow down on the work stuff. Just do the videos because I can do anything I want in a video, so I don't have to ask an editor for permission, or if I want to cover it, I just cover it.
Yeah.
But a few years ago for American Frontiersman, they asked me to do an article on mountain man movies.
That sounds like fun.
From like the 40s, up to the Revenant, because the Revenant was pretty big. So that's what got that going. And so I did. And, it's funny. Some of them are great, and some of them are really not that good. Some of them are a little bit cheesy. But then, surprisingly, like the Big Sky, which was a phenomenal book, and they really couldn't do the whole book in a movie. So they just kind of took a little piece of that out. But that starred Kirk Douglas, and that was just a great movie. I mean, just great. And you can see why Kirk Douglas was such an amazing star. The guy has an incredible charisma on screen. But it was really pretty cool because they didn't have replicas then. So they were using original guns, and most of them, and they were smart. They actually were using flintlocks, which is what made much more sense for that period, the 1820s.
Yeah, that was still too early.
And they had an original swivel breech flintlock rifle in there, which was just really cool. I'm a big swivel breech fan.
Who isn't? They're so cool.
But then you get others, like the one that preceded the Revenant. I'm trying to think. Richard Harris starred in it, but it was another Hugh Glass thing.
Oh, okay.
From back around 1970, and my God, that was awful. I mean, awful. The history was completely wrong. The guns were all like Civil War muskets that they phonied up to look like flints. I mean, all sorts of bad stuff. So it's kind of hit or miss. But it is interesting when you go back and you see one that they really did right that holds up, and you can enjoy it today. Yeah.
So how do you feel about the more recent Revenant movie?
I like the Revenant a lot. Now the ending of the Revenant, like the whole third act, is completely fictitious.
Right, that's what I've heard.
Yeah, it is. It's completely made up. No basis in history at all. But it was 100% action, that third act, so that was pretty good.
Yeah.
The rest of it had a lot of non-historical stuff in it. I mean, the backstory for Hugh Glass was not correct. A lot of things weren't right.
Right.
But they did a pretty good job with the material culture. So it's hard to really kick. I mean, they had some neat guns. They had some good action. The clothes weren't totally ridiculous. So, I mean, by and large, I enjoyed the Revenant. I mean, you got to take it for what it is, you know.
Yeah.
If you're trying to get a documentary out of it, you're going to be out of luck.
Yeah.
But it's actually better than most of the History Channel documentaries I've seen for the last few years. I mean, they had one they did maybe 2 years ago on the Frontiersman, I think it was called, something like that. You know, it had Daniel Boone, all these things in it. And I had a contract to review that and write an article for American Frontiersman on it.
Uh-huh.
And I watched the first 2 episodes of it, and I called up my editor, and I said, you got to rip up that contract. I said, because you're not going to want to read what I would write about this.
Oh, no.
Yeah, because it was awful. I mean, it's just awful. They had a lot of material culture stuff wrong. I mean, the clothes were wrong. You know, they had like tennis shoes under their moccasins. They had a lot of bad stuff in it. But to me, the worst thing is that they actually had the history wrong. I mean, they had Daniel Boone's relationship to Richard Henderson totally misconstrued. They compressed some things, and they portrayed things in a light that were untrue as far as motivations and what was going on. And to me, that's kind of unforgivable, because if the name of your channel is the History Channel,
yeah,
I can forgive you for getting the costuming wrong, but I can't forgive you for getting the history wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to do that right. If you make a mistake with the shirt, oh my goodness, that shirt has a 2-inch wide cuff. You know, okay, I forgive that.
You let that one slide.
Yeah, let that slide. But when you get the history grossly wrong, then that's just really hard for me to get on board with. And that's one of my problems lately. They're about to do a biography of George Washington.
Right, I've seen some things about that
week.
online.
Yeah, I've got my hopes up for it, and if they dash them, I'm going to be terribly disappointed. But their track record in recent years is really bad for actual history, so we'll see.
So, kind of along those lines, do you see, you know, kind of the writing and the video work that you do, putting out accurate history and knowledge? Do you see that in any way as like supplemental for what like the History Channel's doing? Because I've heard that from a lot of people, that they're not pleased with what the History Channel does anymore. They've really gotten away from it. But from me looking at it, kind of in tandem, you have a lot of people online just going out and sharing that history themselves.
Well, I think that's, in a way, the internet has democratized knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
So, you've got a lot of folks sharing stuff. And some of them know what they're talking about.
Not all of them, though.
Some of them don't, but it means you have to be a little more discerning, I guess, as a consumer of that stuff. But, if you find the right groups, and you can get some pretty good information. So I think the problem with the History Channel and places like that is there's not a market for the real history. Not a big enough market. This sort of thing is pretty niche.
Yeah.
There's a new streaming service out called Curiosity Stream.
Okay, I think I've seen some ads for that.
Yeah, and that's all documentaries. And they charge $20 a month for it.
Oof.
Which gives you an idea of what documentaries are worth to people, because like Netflix, they charge $20 a year for it.
Oh, okay.
Netflix is like, $12 or $14 a month now, I guess. So gives you an idea that the documentary people figure if they price it more than dirt cheap, nobody's going to buy it. And I think that's too bad, but I think it's true. People would rather see Pawn Stars or Desperate Housewives than see an actual historical piece.
Yeah.
Except for a small market that really does love that stuff, and that makes it kind of tough on them. But as to whether or not I supplement that, I don't know. What I try to do in my videos or my writing is I try to cover something that I enjoy.
Yeah.
Well, whatever it might be. I've always figured if I like it, somebody else is going to like it. And I try to give people the history of what I'm doing, the historical stuff, and I've tried to find ways of expanding that. I've probably not been that successful. I mean, I've tried a couple of different things, and then they've done okay, but they're hard to do when you're a one-man band. I've got a video on making the Hickok Tut shot, and this is Wild Bill Hickok and Davis Tut, the famous gunfight in Springfield, Missouri. Hickok's fight that made him famous, basically, was shooting Davis Tut because he walked across the town square with Hickok's watch. I mean, just to kind of boil it down to its essentials. So anyway, the gunfight took place at 75 yards, which is kind of interesting because today we think if you get past 7 yards, you're wasting your time, right?
Yeah.
But they didn't think anything of blazing away at each other at 75 yards, and Hickok shot Tut right through the heart at 75 yards. So I did a video on making that 75-yard shot. But I told the whole story of the Hickok-Tut disagreement leading up to it, and tried to make that as dramatic as I could. And I don't know how well I succeeded in that. I was playing both sides of the aisle. But I've tried a few of those. I did one on Jeff Milton, who's a very interesting guy. He's the father of the Border Patrol.
Oh, really?
But yeah. Yep, and he's quite old when he did that. But he started off as a Texas Ranger when he was 17 in 1880. His father was the last Confederate governor of Florida, and committed suicide after the war when everything was lost. And Jeff and his family ended up going from being genteel planters to just scraping by. And Jeff went out west to Texas, worked some stores and ranches as a young teenager, and then became a Texas Ranger, and that was the start of his career. And after that, he did every kind of law enforcement you can imagine. Quite a fascinating guy, but his most famous gunfight was in 1903 or 1904. I think it was in Fairbanks, Arizona, and he was an express guard on a train. Okay. And he got robbed by this gang because they didn't think he was going to be on board. He had switched nights with somebody. And it was a tremendous shootout. I mean, they kind of opened the doors at Fairbanks, and these guys started shooting from the crowd on the platform with high-powered rifles and did quite a bit of damage to him, but he managed to shoot two of them after he'd been pretty much shot to pieces. Wow. It's quite a story, actually. Yeah. But I did a reenactment of that several years ago, and then I did one of his last gunfight, which I always find to be kind of interesting. I had picked up, I was doing antique firearms calendars for a couple of years for a company that makes calendars for like your dentist, to give away to you. Okay, yeah. So they decided instead of kittens and balloons, they'd like to try one with antique guns. So for a couple of years, I did that. And I picked up a 1907 Savage semi-automatic 32 ACP for a picture I was going to do. So that was the last gun, except it was in 380, that Jeff Milton had a gunfight with. It was in 1917. He was in his 50s. And he had, roared into Tombstone, Arizona in his Model T Ford. And this fellow named Fred Koch had just robbed the bank and killed the manager. Probably didn't mean to do that, but he did. and he took off. And Jeff and a buddy chased him down in Jeff's Model T, and Jeff was shooting at him with this little pocket pistol, basically, and hit him in the arm. And as they stopped and gave himself up. And at the trial, the judge said, Jeff, were you trying to hit him in the arm? Because I don't think I've ever seen you miss anybody. And Jeff said, hell no, I was trying to kill him.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. You're making me want to watch and read more into some Western stuff. That's really neat.
There's some great stories. I'll be honest with you, I like all of history, from the Stone Age to like a week before yesterday.
Yeah.
So it's all fun for me, but I definitely like the American frontier the best, but I love all sorts of history. I like medieval history, Renaissance history, ancient history, you name it.
Yeah. It's all fascinating. I think it's fun just to look back and see what came before.
Well, it's all a continuum.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. I mean, there's a big difference, of course, if you look 1,000 years ago against today, but time kind of flows, right? I mean, we break it up into these manageable chunks, and then we put boundaries around it, like they're really significant. But it's kind of like the Old West. I always remind people that a lot of those guys who are there in the Old West were still there in the 1920s and 30s.
Yeah.
Jeff Milton didn't die until the 40s. And he had an active career up into his 70s. Wyatt Earp was in Hollywood in the 20s. He was good friends with Ford, the director.
Okay.
Guy that directed all the John Wayne movies.
Yeah.
So it's not like at 1900 all these guys just stopped operating.
Right.
And went to the rest home or something.
And just signed out,
It just kind of flowed through. I mean, Bat Masterson became a sports writer in New York City, and he was doing that up into the late 20s.
Huh. That must have been something to have lived, kind of at the end of the Civil War and then all the way up into the 1940s. I mean, talk about a cultural rocket ship of change.
Well, yeah. But, if you think about it, if you think about this century, you'd see the same thing.
Yeah.
I think you take any like 80-year lifespan, and you're going to see immense changes.
Oh, definitely.
People that were, say, dying around the time of the Civil War, right? I mean, they were born during the Revolution. When you think about that, some of them were British subjects when they were born. Right. And they were dying during one of the first modern wars.
Okay, yeah, I never thought about that.
They would have gone from not just an agrarian society, but a pre-industrial society. Yeah. To a society that was industrial, that had brand names, that had a lot of the stuff we have now.
So I know my grandfather's, the one is 95 now. He lived through the Depression and World War II, and then, saw the moon launch and the moon landing, and, and now uses a cell phone to call his grandkids.
Yeah, well, that's a big thing.
Yeah.
My dad, who passed away in the 90s, he was born in 1930. But he died. He was only 65 when he died. But when I was in college, he used to say to me, well, you think things are so much different now than when I was a kid. He said, but when I was a kid, we had everything that we have today. And I said, come on, you didn't have TV. He said, we had TV. Most people didn't have any. Right. He said, but they had already invented it. And it was out there. It was already commercial when I was a kid. He said, we had telephones, got cars, TVs, you name it. Everything we got, you got now, we had then. Radio, it's all there. He said computers, they had started computers in the 1890s. He said they got just better now. And, but you know, the thing I always think about is that's pretty much true.
Yeah.
But from the point where he died until now, technology has advanced like 500%. I mean, when he died, cell phones were great big suitcasey things that, you know, honestly looked like World War II field radios. Maybe they had them, but like the world has completely changed now. Like, you can't find a phone booth now.
Right.
Right? They just don't exist. I mean, a lot of things no longer exist, and nobody uses Yellow Pages anymore. And in fact, younger people never even heard of Yellow Pages.
Oh yeah, it's antiquated now.
In fact, a lot, and this always surprised me because I'm a kind of a watch fanatic. But when I was working with a consulting company, a lot of my younger employees didn't own wristwatches,
Mm-hmm.
which I couldn't believe. I said, "How do you know what time it is?" So I'll check my phone. I mean, I had a phone, but I would never check it for the time because I grew up looking at your wrist for the time. But that's just how much things have changed and how much the technology has really changed the way we do things now.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is that's why I enjoy these 18th century events. Though technology is unfortunately stuck their head into that. But when I go to these things, I take my cell phone, I turn it off, and I put it in the glove compartment of my truck.
Yeah.
And I don't look at it for a week. So I see guys around camp that are like still glued to their phones. I think, why would you want to come out here and be immersed in this stuff and then spend every 5 minutes on your phone checking this or checking that? But I like giving up all the technology. I want no radio, no newspapers, no nothing. I want to sleep under the canvas, cook my food on a fire, and just leave me alone.
Yeah, just unplug from it all.
Yeah, I get a little old for it now, so I haven't for the last few years. But for a lot of years, I would go out in the fall, and I would take a solo 18th century hunt, either for deer or for squirrels, depending on what time I could get away. I'd take a week off. I'd go out alone and live completely 18th century.
Oh, wow.
Out in the woods. And I didn't want to see another person.
Yeah.
I didn't want anybody to ruin that illusion for me. If I ran into somebody else, I'd probably have buried them somewhere because I just did not want to be intruded on with the 20th or 21st century.
Right. That's a personal dream of mine. I'd really like to put apart some time to go spend a weekend or a week would be just amazing. Just going out and just hanging out in the woods and ignoring the rest of the world for a little bit. That sounds really nice.
It is a great reset. I mean, I used to, when I worked for the Navy, well, when I retired, I was the head of maritime weapon system support. So I was in charge of all the logistics and supply for ships and submarines, as opposed to the aviation Navy. That's the other half of the Navy. So that was a pretty intense job. I had, over 200 people working for me, and it was a 24-hour-a-day job. It
Goodness.
just worked all the time. Well, because bad stuff happens in the world.
Yeah.
And, it was our job to make sure we were ready for that. So when I was doing something else, I wanted to be completely something else.
Right.
And that's why I started taking those solo hunts. And it was a great mental reset. You come back smelly, dirty, full of whiskers, and thoroughly relaxed. Well worth it. So if you get a chance, just do it. Just take your gear, go out somewhere. Do you live in Indiana?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm up in northern Indiana, just about an hour south of Michigan.
Yeah, I know. I own a property in the woods, which is where my range Duelist Den is, and I always joke that anybody who owns woodland property realizes that you spend more time working on it than you do playing on it.
Oh, yeah. I think a lot of people don't realize. They think trees just kind of sit there and trails just kind of happen, but there's a lot of work that goes into it, especially now with all the invasive species and things. It really becomes a headache.
Yeah, and trees fall down. I mean, we've been so wet these last couple of years.
Yeah.
That, you get a good windstorm, and the next thing you know, you got a huge tree blocking one of your trails. You got to get out there with a chainsaw and spend a couple of days cutting all that up.
Yeah. You mentioned a little bit earlier on the call, I can't quite remember it, but it's something about modern handguns. What was the interest there, or what's your background in that area?
I like all firearms.
Yeah.
And I like modern guns as much as I like the old ones, almost. So I've always shot modern guns as well as the old guns. I mean, I had my first muzzleloader. I guess I built it when I was around 18 or 20. But, I had 22s and shotguns, Winchester 94s before I had my first muzzleloader.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been interested. And I've always been interested in handguns, I think, because of watching all the cowboy movies. So I've had handguns for like as long as I could have them. Since I was, actually my father would get them for me when I was 18. But,
right.
So anyway, it's like anything else. I have to live in the 21st century, even though I like playing in the 18th century. So I carry a 1911 every day, and I work out with it. I've done a lot of modern handgun writing. I never considered it my forte because I'm not. I don't have a police background or that sort of thing.
Right.
Right. So it's a lot of that stuff is more for those guys, I think, to write with credibility. But I've done a lot of reloading. So when I became the reloading editor of Combat Handguns, that I was already writing for Combat Handguns. So that's something I like. So I reload 25 or 30 different calibers.
Oh, wow. From
old West calibers up till modern stuff, 10 millimeter, you name it. So it's just always been an interest of mine. I collect Cold War military pistols.
Ooh.
So and I also collect double action Colt revolvers.
Okay.
A small collection of those, along with every cap and ball revolver ever made, and I've got a couple of Colt single actions, and all the clones. And,
yeah.
But I've got modern guns. I've got a fair number of antique pistols, a couple of antique rifles, but a fair number of antique pistols. I've from cap and ball up through Old West type cartridge guns. I enjoy them all. I shoot them all. I even reload rimfire cartridges.
Oh, really?
Shoot some of the, yeah. I reload 38 rimfires. I've got a Remington police model, which was made in cap and ball, and then later as a cartridge conversion to 38 rimfire. And I've got a 38 rimfire. It was made in 1873.
Huh.
It's a fun little gun to shoot, but I've got a 41 rimfire, pocket pistols, that sort of thing, but from the 1870s. Wow. I like the old stuff mostly.
Yeah, it's got a lot of character, I think.
Yeah, I don't own much stuff newer than a 1911.
Yeah,
but I like double action revolvers, particularly the older ones. I think they're a lot of fun. There's just something about them that they're very mechanical. It's just something about the whole mechanism and that period. So I find it all interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But flintlock rifles are still probably my number one passion. I really enjoy them. So I try to do a few videos on that. There's no secret that cap and ball revolvers are what people want the most from me.
Oh, really?
And that those are the most popular videos I do, or the cap and ball stuff. And and that's most of what I do. I do a lot of build videos in the wintertime.
Mm-hmm. I've noticed those.
Well, it's hard to get out and shoot, and I like building rifles. I'm not that good at it, but I like doing it. So a few years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I hadn't built a rifle for like 20 years, but I just had the yen. So I wanted to make this Bucks County rifle.
Uh-huh.
And I decided to video it. Thought, I'm going to do it, I'll video it. And I really thought it'd be the only build that I ever videoed. It was like a 32-part series. And as it turned out, people wanted more. So I've been videoing more of them. It's not the most popular thing I do, but the people who like it really like it. So I feel like if I didn't do it for them, I'd be letting them down.
Yeah.
Because it's a smaller audience who's interested in that, but their interest is very high. And I hear from a lot of them at shows. If I go to Dixon's, that sort of thing, that's what people want to talk about. But mostly it's the cap and ball.
Yeah.
In fact, I was at School of the Long Hunter last year, which it's at Prickett's Fort, West Virginia.
Okay.
And it's a fun event. It's a learning as well as 18th century camping event. It's not a shooting event, but it's more of a learning environment at the fort. It's just a very cool 18th century thing. So Mark Baker, I don't know if you're familiar with Mark.
The name sounds familiar.
He's one of the big names in living history, 18th century living history. He used to write for Muzzleloader.
Okay.
Years ago, but he's one of the guys. He and John Curry are probably two of the guys that really popularized trekking.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And all that. So they're like of an age. So he was doing a program at the fort as part of the School of the Long Hunter, and I had a gig to cover the school for American Frontiersman, write an article on it. So before he did his thing, I took him aside to photograph him and do that stuff. So I introduced myself, and he said, "Oh, you're the cap and ball revolver guy." Yeah. I would have thought he would have known me more from my 18th century stuff. As it turns out, the YouTube cap and ball revolver stuff trumps everything else.
Huh. That's interesting. I know John Curry I've known for a long time. He does a lot of trekking articles for Muzzle Blast magazine. And
right.
I see a lot of, I try to share as many of the articles as I can online, and parts of them and little teasers and things. But I think by and large, the John Curry articles are what people compliment the most. And people love seeing people going out and trekking, and living simply and doing things the hard way like that.
Yeah, John is very good. John's a friend of mine.
Okay.
And, I really enjoy his writing. I have to admit, I enjoy that a lot. I'm getting to the point now where these bones are getting a little too old to get out and do it all the time. Too old and too fat. But I still appreciate it. John's about my age, and he's still out there doing it. So I should probably get out and do it more. But I've become a fair weather trekker.
Right.
If I know it's going to be good for a couple of days, I'll go out and do it, but I'm not going to get rained on or get snowed on or any of that stuff. I'm beyond that being fun.
Right. Yeah, I've kind of had an itch. We've had some snow here, and I see guys online going out and making a little winter camp, for a couple of days. And
yeah,
the challenge of that is quite alluring to somebody my age.
Yeah, it's fun. I used to do that all the time.
That's great.
Just take off for a couple of days and go up in the forest north of me over here in the state forest. Like I say, now it's got to be nice weather.
Yeah.
I don't do it in the winter. I don't do it in the middle of the summer. I'm like a couple of days in the spring, a couple of days in the fall. I'll get out and do that. Go hike in and set up a camp. It's just fun.
Yeah, and I think that's what it's about. It's just having some fun. I like to give everybody a chance to plug, their work and their website and, where people can find them. So if there's anything that you want to talk about or mention, to get the word out, this is kind of your time to take a few minutes and share that.
Well, appreciated the opportunity to talk to you.
Yeah, this has been great.
And since we've been talking about YouTube, my YouTube channel is Duelist 1954. And I have the same channel on another site called Full30, full30.com,
Okay.
which is just Duelist. But the same videos go up on both of them. Full30 is dedicated just to firearms.
Oh, that's neat.
So, yeah, it is. I think it's fun. And then for writing, I appear periodically in Muzzleloader and American Frontiersman. And, I expect to keep that up. So just keep your eyes open.
Yeah.
I'll pop up somewhere.
Yeah, we'll do our best we'll put links to, all of your pages and things in the show notes. So if anybody's listening that wants to check out your work, that'll be an easy way for them to get to that pretty quickly. It's been a lot of fun. It's, I get out and try to do as many videos as I can, but this is something that's nice. And it's been nice to do over the winter, where I can sit down and talk with somebody, for an hour or so and get something out there, when they're not events or shoots going on.
Right. That's the thing about the winter. It gives you an opportunity to catch up on other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like a lot of people take the winter to work on builds and things because I think everybody's stuck inside. So everybody starts building a new gun or something.
Yeah. I've been working for 3 winters on this York County rifle.
Oh, have you?
Yeah. Usually I'm not that slow, but I told you, for a couple of years I had a calendar gig, and that was also during the winter.
Okay.
So that would like eat up a month or so of my winter. So the money was phenomenal. So I really could not complain about it.
Right.
But this year I've got a little bit more time. So I think I'm going to finish it up.
That's
this
great.
year, and then I'll have to decide what to build next year.
We'd once again like to thank the guys over at the Primitive Pursuit podcast. If you haven't been following them, we've been shouting them out for a few weeks now, but their episodes just keep getting better and better. They keep finding these great characters. I don't know where they find them, but they just keep finding these neat guys to interview and talk about everything from period archery to traditional muzzleloading. They've got some neat stuff going. So if you like the primitive or traditional parts of muzzleloading or archery, you've got to check these guys out. The podcast, again, is Primitive Pursuit. You can follow them on Instagram and Facebook. Primitive Pursuit. The Muzzle Blast podcast is the official podcast of the National Muzzleloading Rifle Association. The Muzzle Blast podcast is the sister publication to the Muzzle Blast magazine. We've been publishing the Muzzle Blast magazine here at the NMLRA since 1933. It's the official membership magazine of the National Muzzleloading Rifle Association. So if you like what we're doing here or want to hear more or read more, we have a huge back catalog of magazines that you can access as a member digitally, and we come out with a new magazine each month. So you can get it digitally emailed to you or mailed right to your door. It's packed with tons of original articles from, muzzleloader building, competition muzzleloader shooting, muzzleloader hunting, and traditional craft stuff. It's jam-packed every month. The team at Muzzle Blast work really hard to make a great magazine, and they just keep making it better. If you'd like to support the show or like what you're hearing, go to nmlra.org and you can join the NMLRA. We've got a quick form in the store, and you'll save 10% off your membership or merchandise if you use the code podcast10. That lets us know you came from the show, and it's just a little thank you for listening. We had the SHOT Show last month, but February is shaping up to be pretty busy as well. This week, I'm going down to interview Yankee Doodle Muzzleloaders. They put on the Kalamazoo Living History Show up in Kalamazoo, Michigan. That'll be at the end of March. And then this coming weekend, we'll be at the Connor Long Rifle Living History Trade Fair in Noblesville, Indiana. It's kind of one of the first shows in the area, and it's one I've gone to for many years. So I'm excited to go down there and film and interview some craftsmen and vendors that, help keep this sport alive. And then next month, we'll be heading up to the Kalamazoo Living History Show. And by that time, it's pretty much spring and events around here start kicking up. So we'll be getting on the road some more and just bringing you a lot more from the muzzleloading and living history world. So thank you so much for listening and have a great day.